Well, hello everyone, and thank you so much for coming. It really means a lot to me because I know there's very interesting and exciting presentation elsewhere, and you chose for this one. So I hope we at least have some fun, and I think it can bring some value in many organizations. So without further ado, let's get started. So we're going to be talking about automating Power BI governance. This is something that comes from a real case of one of my customers. They had a mess. And I thought that this could work, and it is working as of today, and they're very, very happy about it. So let's see what it is about. First of all, this is me. My name is Bernat Agulló, and I'm based in Barcelona, and I work in a small consulting company on BI and data engineering. And maybe you have seen my face on Twitter or something. I post a lot of things, and I have a blog where I mostly talk about other topics, so no Power BI governance, but mostly like calculation groups, C#, scripting, stuff like this. But, well, here I'm talking about security groups today. So, this is something that happens a lot in organizations. People change departments. Oh, they have some permissions to see something, and then John moved from finance to sales. So, and this happens quite a lot, and it's like, oh, okay. And then John needs to go around like, oh, can you give me permission for that? And then the person responsible for that is like, what? Really? Do I need to do that? Because, I mean, this keeps happening, and brings no value, right? And it's like, yeah, sure. But really, it would be much better if she didn't have to do this work. But this is not the worst, because what John will not do is go to finance and say, hey, can you remove permissions from me to those finance reports? But actually, he does not need that permission anymore. But this will never happen. I haven't seen it ever happening. Yeah. So, OK, so where do we go from here? Now, so we here have the two main problems with that. Basically, we kind of start maintaining some secret list of like who is in that department, who is in another department. And we just increase permissions. We never remove permissions. So this is something that is clearly not working, right? But it's like this in many organizations, I think. So, and then there's some from systems, it's like, but what are you doing? You need security groups. Security groups will solve everything, right? But well, let me tell you about it. Security groups everywhere, yeah? I mean, depending on how you do things, you might make matters worse. I arrived at the organization, it was like something like this. Yeah? So somebody said, OK, we have this new tool, it's Power BI. OK, who's handling permissions now? Like, oh, IT. OK, give it to IT. And IT said, oh, this looks like a database. So they were used at like, the read permission security group, the write permission. And so they created an admin security group, a read security group, and all these sort of things. And it was a disaster. Because, I mean, you enter in a Power BI workspace, and then like, who has access here? You have no idea. You just see like 3 groups. It's like, OK, these guys are the admin. These guys are like, thank you. I can imagine that. But it's not bringing me any value. And how can I get who is in there? This is not easy in many organizations to see the contents of security groups. So at the end, they actually didn't know who was there, right? And also, you have a huge amount of security groups because they do them like focus on the items, so like on the workspace or in some app thing or whatever. So if the organization keeps creating workspaces and apps and so on, your security groups will keep growing, and you'll have to maintain all those groups. But at the end, these groups are the same thing, the same problem you had. Basically, now it's worse because you need somebody else to manage it for you. And you end up in a situation like this, like, hey, can you give me access to the reports? Well, maybe it's going to be slower as well because you have to fill up like Jira ticket. And then the Jira guy is like, OK, not another ticket. I mean, normally in many organizations, there's no due process of like, ooh, this person should have access to this report or not. No, it's like, oh, I have a ticket, like, boom, there it goes. Where's the value in that? There is none, let me tell you. And I mean, it's people like wasting their human abilities, just doing something that is written and it doesn't bring much value, like putting somebody in a report just because somebody has said so. And of course, I might choose to put it in some groups and some other not, and maybe we'll forget some, so it's getting complicated. And the other part of the story, it's even less likely that will happen. I mean, can you remove me from the security groups that were giving me permission to the finance reports? It's not going to happen. Yeah. So arguably, this is worse than just sharing the stuff directly. Yeah, because you have more groups, and I mean, unless you have a good structure. But it's very, very difficult, and you still will have this problem that somebody else has to manage a group, and the people mostly will not have no idea who's in those groups. So just by going to the audience and say, okay, who's access to that, you don't have an immediate understanding on who is able to access this. Yeah. So, where do we go from here? Let's think. So we have this overhead, nobody understands, and they're hard to manage. We have a problem. But let's go to the core. This is get philosophical. Why do we share something with somebody? It's not because of the name they have, right? So why are we sharing with that user? This is weird. Yeah? Normally, we are more interested in the role they have in the organization. Yeah? I'm sharing it with you because it's a finance report and you work in finance, so you should be aware of what the content of this report is. So, can we do something like this? What if we could share with the department of that person? That would be awesome, right? Well, welcome to dynamic security groups. Yeah? This is a feature that is widely unknown, I would say, because when I mentioned that, even people who are in IT and so on, like, can you do that, really? Yeah, yes, it is something that is available on Entra ID if you have a P1 or P2 plan. But they are not crazy expensive, so it's nothing related to the P1 in Power BI. No, it's like, I don't know, $5 or something per user, and it has a bunch of other features because in the customer they had it, and they were not using that, so it probably has other things that make sense. So basically, when you create a security group, there is a membership type that normally is grayed out if you only have the free tier, but once you have a paid one, then you can say, okay, this is the dynamic user security group, okay? So far, so good. And what does this mean? Well, that basically you can create some sort of a filter or an expression on the metadata of these users to define who belongs to the security group, which is very nice. So you have some drop-downs, so you have several operators. We'll see later in a demo, but this is very basic. So you say, okay, what's the property, what's the operator, and what's the value? So, and here if you say department equals finance, you end up with a nice rule syntax underneath. You can also edit directly. Also, Azure.department, and then you have this hyphen EQ finance in double quotes. This means all the users that have department equals to finance will be automatically in that security group. This is already huge. I mean, because when that person is not in finance anymore, then that person is not longer in that security group. Yeah? So, and when somebody joins the finance department, then it's immediately in that security group with all the consequences that this has. Isn't that beautiful? And it's even better because there's already a department that takes care of that metadata, which is HR. HR should know who is in each department. And if they don't, then they should start doing that, right? So it's wonderful because then I say I share something with finance, and then the HR will keep updating. And if somebody joins, well, then they will say, okay, this guy is now in finance, or this guy is no longer in finance. And they will update the metadata in Entra ID, right? But we need to make sure that this is true, because if you ask, they say, yes, our metadata is updated and is perfect. But, well, I mean, we work in data, right? We need to be sure of stuff. So now we'll dive a bit more on how can we make sure that the HR data is really the same as the data in Entra ID? Yes? How can we do that? So this is what happens. normally in many organizations, they have applications and all these sort of things. But at the end of the day, they have a super secret Excel file where they have the list of all the employees with the salaries and everything. Yeah, and then there is some process, and this can be different in any organization, and how this information somehow travels to the Active Directory. Sometimes it's even through emails, like, oh, this guy has just moved, or like something like this, so there must be very many gaps on what happens with the information. Sometimes they have a separate Excel file that they need to manually update, and then like some process that brings this data to Active Directory. Or if you are lucky these days, there's some applications called like Active ID Manager Plus or something like this. So, and it's like a web application, and which allows you to upload like a CSV file, right? This is the best. And then normally they work with an on-prem HR, on-prem Active Directory, and this gets synced like a few times a day to the Azure version of it, okay? This is what happens. But now, how can we make this bottom comparison? So first, we need that HR gives us like a clean and openly shareable list of employees with their organizational data. Yeah, should be attainable. Like, just give me the list of department, and maybe just department is enough. If you want to get like more fancy, maybe you can ask also for the user position or any other attributes that might be relevant to the security groups that you have in mind, okay? And from the other side, there's something called the Graph API, which allow you to extract all this data that is in Entra ID, and so that we can compare them both, okay? So here is the Entra ID, yeah? This is in the Entra ID, by default, you say, okay, give me the users. It will give you just some attributes, but you can do like a select. And in this select, you can add many things. And this took me a while to see everything. Here, the important one would be something that allows you to compare both lists, right? Mail is one, but this last one, on-premises, some account name. This is normally the Windows login. This can be also very important to compare both. And also, on on-premises Azure, on Active Directory, they have even like 15 extra fields that they can define for anything. So if you have like Teams or I don't know, anything that one can be managed there, this is also that you can extract. In the organization I was working with, that included a field saying if that user is an employee or not. So very important, right? It's an internal employee, and even they have like I don't know, so government ID number and stuff like this. And if you add this on-premise extension attributes, then it will bring them to you, because they are also synchronized online. Yeah, just need to know what does each of the fields mean, because you will receive them like extension 1, extension 2, and so on. But if you know what they are, it will help us in the comparison. Yeah, because there are many more users than employees in the company. Yeah, you will get everything there, like, yeah, and sometimes like rooms have users and stuff like that, right? So once you have the Excel and the JSON, you need to filter both lists to the users that you really need to, that should be in both places, right? So if you have that extra field, you can filter by the employees, and also on the other side, maybe there's some users that are not expected to be found on the Active Directory. So you kind of filter both, and then you see what are the matches. And maybe there you already start discovering stuff, like, wait, how come we have users only in the Excel, or why are there only users in the other side? You might discover like some guy that left the company long ago, and somehow it still has an active user on the online or something, and we're paying for licenses and stuff like this. Who knows? But the interesting part is the one that joins, right? If you have the user in both places, then it's time to compare the attributes. Yeah, we'll see. This is Power Query. It's quite straightforward, but we'll see a few details on how can we get to a table that looks like this table here. And here you see I have for the same ID, I have a row for each attribute, and then a column for the Excel and a column for the Entra ID. And then you just compare and say, okay, so you see, for example, John, so it's still finance in Entra ID, but then the Excel from HR is already in sales. Okay, like, so this process, there is some gap there because this information hasn't traveled yet to that to the Entra ID in Azure, right? But this should just to ensure that the process is working properly or not. Yeah. So at some point you say, okay, now it's working. So now we can start using this metadata for real because it's what HR says. So if it's wrong, go and talk to HR. Okay. So once we have this, then we can start creating security groups that make sense to us. So SSG sales would be like all the employees that work in sales and finance, or director. Also, you can use the role of the user if you want, and or even complex ones. So you want to just like the finance analyst should have some permission to some reports, and I don't know, and just director and the analyst only, or I don't know. You should. It's a moment to think about like what do I need. In general, it's very basic. So just by department, in many organizations, it's just a matter of keeping some degree of level. You don't want to share everything with everyone, but the department level is normally more than enough to say, okay, this is just for these guys. If they look it or not, it doesn't really matter to you. It's like, okay, this is your stuff. You should have access to it. Now it's on your own to do what you want. Yeah, so you create those groups. Yeah, we basically did just for the employees of each department. And then comes the magic. It's just, you go there, you create your app, it's like, okay, this is for sales. You type this. This is the last time you'll go to that part. You'll never have to go there again. Because the security group will update itself, and new users will come in, and all users will go out automatically. Magic, really. Yeah, so it's like, oh, but I'm in sales, but it doesn't say so in my Outlook. Okay, then go talk with HR, not my problem. Yeah. So, and now the magic is what happened. John moves to sales. So, hey, I've noticed that kind of access to reports. They're like, yeah, you already have access. Like, come on, man, it's already happened. So, and if it doesn't say so in your Outlook, you're not yet in sales. So, this is, and the best part of the story is that now, I mean, this already happened. I mean, you don't have to remove permissions because it's already gone. Yeah. So very, very beneficial. So enough of all this talking. Yeah. So let me see what it is. Now you see this. Okay. How does this look for real? So this is John. Yeah. Okay, I'm John Smith, and I am in finance, but I want to move. Well, I just moved to sales. How would I do that? Yeah. Now this is another account, and here we can see all the users. We see who's in sales, who's in finance. So let's go and edit John. Okay, so now we can go into the properties, the job information. And instead of finance, we'll have sales. Yeah, I don't have these fancy apps to update, right? Because that normally goes through the on-premise and a domain and all these sort of things. So we're just skipping about this. So now, if we go again here, let's see if I can refresh this. Okay, so John is already in sales. Oh, here, this is a security group. Maybe here we'll still see John here is still in finance, yeah, because this takes some seconds, I would say, to update. But eventually, he should disappear from here and appear at the other side, which is this is sales. If we go to members, so John's still not there. We'll just date one more time. And this will eventually happen. Yeah. Oh, and here we still see just the finance reports in the installed apps. Yeah. But fear not. Oh, it's gone. Yeah. So it has left finance and it's now in sales. All right. And now let's see what happens on the other side. Sales. Okay, so it has moved from sales. Nobody changed any security group, and now he has access to sales. Well, this is pointless. But the nice thing as well, from the app perspective, is if I go Wait a minute. If you go into the sales app, this is another user, yeah? If I go and, where is it? Share, manage access. So, yeah. So you see, in sales, I see this. So, okay, who has access to that? Oh, SG sales. Oh, that's all the users in sales. So it has a value for me. And I can imagine easily who has access to that. I mean, at least from it's much, this helps me much more than, yeah, sales app users or something like this. I know that because SG sales, I mean, it's quite obvious, this is, or you can do some small training. These groups just contain the users that have this attribute on their properties, okay? And yeah, and that's pretty much the magic behind it. Okay. From there, also, let's get a bit more into that comparison. This is not really the thing of this presentation, but once we are here, we can just do that. Let's imagine that HR has kindly sent us this table, okay? They had like some employees, and you see that some guy that is just like maintenance, they don't have even an email, stuff like that, yeah? Might be in that Excel, no big deal. So, and now, and even like the field names, of course, will not match those of Entra ID, but that's okay. So here in a different Excel, what I'll do is first I'll bring that data in, and I'll do some cleaning. So I'll, for instance, I know that I only want to compare people with email, so I get rid of that fifth person. I'll just use the same names as in the Entra ID. And I will add a column called source. Yeah, this will help me later. Yeah, and I'll do something similar for the Entra ID. So I'll basically get rid of the people who should not be in that comparison, and I will add the source column. Yeah, this is the value in Entra ID. Okay, so let me go into the Power Query. So basically, once we have this, we can go into ID check. So here what we do, okay, we start with one of the table, and then we append the other one underneath, okay? So then we keep only the ID that we are using for the comparison, the source, and one more. Doesn't really matter. Yeah, one that is always full with name, for instance. And now we pivot this. Yeah, we use the name as for counting, and we use the source for the pivot. All right. So we see, I mean, who is in which ID we have in each source. Yeah, and we can add one more, like and we can detect those that are only in one of both sources, and that will give us like some initial comparison, like, okay, this guy is not there. And this can be already a discussion with HR, like, why is this happening, and so on. But now, then I have this other query, which is just filtering by the OKs. Yeah, this is the one that I want to compare. And then let's do the attribute check. The attribute check starts the same way. So I have one table, I put the other one underneath, and and then I do an inner join with the OK IDs. Yeah? So I said, okay, just leave me those that I know that they are in both sources. Yeah? This will create me an extra column, which I don't need for anything, so I just get rid of it. And now, this is the tricky, well, sort of tricky. I will get the ID and the source, and I will pivot the other fields. Yeah, so, and then I will have one column will be the attribute and the other the value that has there. Yes? And once I pivot this, now it's time to pivot the source. So finally, I have for one ID, I have one row for each attribute. And in one column, I have the value I have in one source, and then I have the value in the other source. Yeah? And I can finally create a comparison column. And here I just, this is a Japanese way of doing things. I like so if it's okay, it's an O. If it's wrong, it's an X. Very compact, very nice. And I just, and then I put some type. and this is my comparison. Yeah. So, and actually, since I already have done this, this is the ID check. So this is I would call and say, oh, okay, where is this going? And this is my check. Yeah. Here I have all the detail, and I can see, okay, so it really is just finance and sales in the different two. But it's quite nice. This format allows us, okay, can you go it? Or whatever. Oh, man. Whatever. Okay, maybe if I do this. Okay. Okay, let me sneakily come back. Okay. So you can get a very nice summary table saying how is a comparison, how the comparison go. Like, okay, so for this field, you have everything is okay and none wrong. Here, 3 and 1. So this is not just for this purpose. So if you are doing migrations or anything like this is perfect. I mean, I used it like twice when I was migrating some processes, but it was also very convenient when I had to do this check. And you can also create another dynamic pivot table, just so all the ones that are wrong, so that you have a summary, say, okay, this is everything that is wrong. And so you can talk like, why did that happen? This should be only a one-time thing or something until a proper process is put in place and you can ensure this. If they say, no, we're going to keep it doing manually or so on, you can get this code and then maybe build like some Power BI report that then it will send an alarm every time. You just need that HR will send like this clean file to some location that you can load into Power BI and then set up this comparison to happen at, I don't know, at least once a week. And if there's some difference, like, hey, say an alarm, like something's not working, yeah? So I had something like that working for a while. Finally, they put the CSV application. And what I did is I already had like some macros working for the HR. And so I added one more, like, okay. So when they save the file, it's like, do you want the CSV? And like, boom, and then it gets generated. And they like that very much, yeah, because they can update themselves the Active Directory. And yeah, and it's something that they can handle. I think I have a few more remarks, but I mean, so how do I handle exceptions? Yeah? Because sometimes things are more complex than I assume. But actually, I think exceptions are easier to manage because you can then just share. You can still share with individual users. Yeah, say, okay, this for some reason this guy needs permission. I think it's better to put it outside the security groups. And this is then it's obvious that this is an exception. It's like, this is for sales, but also this guy. Maybe, I think it's easier than just to put everybody in the same security group and then you have no traceability on why are these people in that security group at some point. I mean, this is my opinion, of course, yeah. And external users, this is maybe the trickiest because in some organizations, that's a lot of people, yeah. And HR is like, no, I don't know. I don't know who these people are. Like, it's half the organization, but I have nothing to do with these people. But, well, then we need somebody to take care of these people. So maybe each department can have permission to update certain groups of users, or I don't know, there's some rules. Probably there's a process that needs to be put into place and permissions to be given so that there's one person at each department that is responsible for updating the metadata of their external users. But companies are normally very wary of saying this external user is from that department because anything that makes them look like part of the organization can backfire at some point in the future and that they cannot be fired and stuff like this. So it's going to be tricky anyway. So for those cases, then yeah, maybe this is not the best approach because they might never get proper metadata. So maybe somebody will need to keep maintaining some security groups, if they are a thing. I mean, normally external users don't get access to much anyway. What else? Yeah, but say, okay, Bernard, but okay, maybe somebody does not really know who is in sales or something, and they really want to know the names of everybody who's there. Well, there are APIs also for that, yeah? So here you see you can get the list of groups, yeah? So this is sort of like the API looks something like this, and then you can also filter, because security groups is, I mean, the way you have to do it is first you get a list of security groups, and if you want to get the people inside without fearing, because there's some limits, right? So you can expand all the groups, but maybe you'll reach some, I think it's 5,000 record limit or something like this, so it's dangerous to do it all at once. So it's best to first get the list of security groups, and then just go one by one and say, okay, give me the members, and so on, right? And if you can filter then the security groups, so much better. Yeah, because then, because security groups is a lot, because they're all, I mean, it will return you all the sorts of security groups. So just choose a prefix, this is the best approach, and just extract those. And then you can just iterate over those security groups and keep getting the, and then it's quite nice because you can build a report and say, okay, from these groups, I mean, I have a person, I want to know in which security group is now, and then you can choose which security group you want to share with in case there's more than one, because maybe that person is I don't know, finance analyst and also just finance. So you think, oh, is that just for only the analysts or is for everybody? So because maybe you didn't think about that. So that's also a way of, well, of deciding which security group you need to share each app with or something like this. Yes? Well, what about if the HR is not reliable as well? Now, then this organization has some deep problems, I would say. But of course, then you cannot use that metadata. Yeah? And it's like, I don't know, just take care of it. I mean, each admin needs to, well, take responsibility somehow. But I think maybe the thing would be to find a way to have a single source of truth of who is working in that organization. I mean, if you cannot know this, how are you going to know how much you sold? I mean, much more difficult, I would say. So, I think, okay. So where's the catch? Okay, well, there is only one thing you need to fear, and it's that HR departments love renaming stuff. Yeah, so it's like, no, we have now a new initiative, and we're going to rename everything. This is dangerous if you are following this approach. Because if they do it and you don't know, okay, everybody lost access to everything in Power BI. You don't want this to happen. So it should be a coordinated effort to start deploying these security groups so that they tell you like, oh, Bernat, think about it, we're going to do that. This actually happened to me like last week. I mean, the fact that they are about to change the security, the department names. Like, okay, before you update the Active Directory, please send me the before and after of all these changes that you're about to do. And with a lot of Power Query, I ended up with the new syntax of the rule. And then department is either the old or the new department. Yeah, so you can put parentheses, you can do all these things. And I created a huge Jira ticket. Please update all these security groups to this syntax. You can also rename the security group. This is not something that you can change it, because I mean, if the department name changed, you should also change the name of the security group attached to that department, so it makes sense when you read it, right? And there were a few tricky things, because sometimes then two departments might merge into one. So you cannot rename both groups to the new name, but you can keep one, and then the other one you put like a 2 or something, and after some months, then this should go away, and just keep one, because everybody is in both, so it doesn't really need to have both. Just so when the fact that nobody loses access at any point, right? This is the point. And what about static security groups? Are they gone? No, they're not, because it's impossible to have everything under control in Active Directory, even because those external attributes, well, you need to work with IT to enable them, and I don't know, and who's going to take care of that? And I myself, I keep a few static security groups for, I don't know, who can certify a data set or something like this. But there's also something that, surprisingly, even IT people are not always aware that you can define a security group owner, yeah, and the owner can add people to that group. So I really don't believe that sending requests to IT for every change you need in a security group is the best approach. I mean, for some security groups, definitely, but not all of them. So who can certify that it said this is something that should come from the Power BI admin? I don't think that systems has any say on that. So why should we say to systems that there's this guy that should be in this security group to certify Power BI semantic models? Doesn't make sense to me. So if you manage to, you can put an owner. I mean, in one organization they were not okay with that, but somehow put me as an owner, and I could actually add people to those security groups. So you can test your own way in that. So, but at any rate, in general, so if you can focus the security group on the people rather than the thing, it kind of makes more sense most of the time. Yeah. So, and I think that's all for me. I discussed this whole story in my blog in the company where I work. So, rethinking security groups is Reina. Also, I publicly call out to Just Blimbeck, who wrote wonderful blog post on how to extract metadata from the Graph API and Power BI and so on. And I also have another blog post on that comparison thing in case you want to get again. Oh, we have a question.
Yeah, just a quick one, and I might have missed it, so apologies for that. What permissions do users actually need to get into Microsoft Entra so they can then view the membership of the groups, assuming they're separate?
Oh no, I don't. Yeah, I don't. I didn't mean that everybody should go into Entra ID to see the group membership. Just quickly mentioned that you can also use the same, well, another Microsoft Graph API to extract those.
So just spin up a Power BI report.
Yeah, that's what I've done. Yeah, so it's quite convenient, and actually it's good also for pretty much anything, extracting pretty much daily extraction of all the users and security groups. I think it's very convenient for certain things, especially the users. Because if you are managing Power BI and stuff, you will have an activity, and you want to track activity over time. Yeah, users come and go, right? So, and if you want to see the activity by department and so on, you will need some sort of type 2 dimension for all the users. And my workaround so far is just to get all those snapshots and then just do a huge group by ID, and still works more than a year later. So it's very convenient to have all these snapshots for many things. Yeah. And other than that, I think I have, yeah, let's connect. I'm more than happy to listen of this work for you. And yes, I want all this feedback. Oh, question, yes. Yes. Yeah.
So definitely
Yeah.
going to explore this in more detail, so thanks for sharing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, very, very convenient. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Who said that?
Oh, I said it's just more of a comment to the...
I've got a mic if anyone else has a question.
Well, I mean, it's not really complicated. I hope the main point came across. It's just more a philosophical thing than a technical thing, I would say. But really, really, I mean, people are very happy about these security groups because they were like really having to, type all the names because the static security groups wasn't really working for them either. So it was a game changer. Read. Whoops, not working. Hello. Not working. Yeah.
I can speak really loudly.
Yeah, because I have this sound here. So.
So upstream, downstream.
Oh. Upstream, downstream.
Upstream, downstream conversation. So if you have scenarios where rather than a single finance group, if there's like multiple finance groups and you have to start actually looking for if contains a certain word as part of those dynamic things, would you recommend actually doing that in the filter and finding a word as a wildcard search, or would you go back to who's ever managing the intra groups and maybe encourage them to have an explicit single group?
Oh
made
yeah,
for that?
yeah. I mean, yeah, this happens as well. Yeah, and one of the, I mean, this customer, they were actually two tenants, and then they did things differently, and one would have like the apartment plus the business line or something. But I mean, yeah, you need to adapt to pretty much what is there and how much do you think they will come to your terms. But I think in general, though, HR will be happy about this. It's like, what you do is really valuable. I mean, Power BI will depend on your metadata. We need to put this straight, you know? And I think you can get some collaboration in that sense, because they will have the power now. Like, I think it's, but otherwise, yeah, yeah, so it contains and so on. It's a bit always dangerous, right? But
So avoid fuzzy lookups.
yeah, no, well, lookups, yeah, anything that you don't, yeah, better if you don't have to manage anything at all. Yeah,
Thank you.
welcome.